This is Gemara Yevamos Daf Chav. All the learning should be incredible. Shidduch for Yisrael Chaim and Dvar Shlomi ben Levi Zahava Oifik ben Teli Shimon ben Chaya Yochav and Miriam Bas Chaya Pesach Chana Bas and Nechama, and they should find their Shidduch Hagun Bekaraiv, as well as learning should be as closer for Shlema of Shmuel Yos ben Yefei this moment Tila Neftali ben Lester Nechama Bas Yiva Bas Sheva Vega Bas Ashira Chana Besoich Shar Chali Yisrael. We're holding on Yud Tes Amid Beis. We picked up about 10 lines in the wide lines. The first word on line is Mimili Dikadushin Avali Lemeluf. We finished yesterday discussing the first case in the Brisa, and now we're up to the second case. Says the Gemara Asaba Maimer. What happens if the brother does a Maimer to the Yevama? Again, Maimer being Kedushin Dirabanan. So what happens if Asaba Maimer V'achinoy L'rach? We have Reuven and Shimon. Reuven is Nifter. Reuven's wife falls Libam to Shimon. Shimon does Maimer. Shimon does Erusin. Erusin to a Yevama is called Maimer. Kedushin Diraban. Then what happens? V'achar Gachnoy L'ach. Then a Levi is born. Oy. Or Shanoy L'ach Levi is born. V'achar Maimer. Then they did Maimer. Umeis. And then what happens? The Shimon dies. So the woman in which he did Maimer to, Reuven's ex-wife, and Shimon's own wife, the Tzara, falls to Yibam, to whom? To Levi. What is that halacha? Says the Brisa Rishayni Yatzim Shamei Sachem Shalei Ba'alamai. The first wife, Reuven's wife, the Yevama, the one that did Maimer, is Potter. Why? Because Levi did not exist in the world with that marriage. Eishes Ach Shaloi Haya Ba'alamai. Ushniya, and Shimon's own wife, the Tzara. Chaylet says, V'loi Misyabemes has to do Chalitza to get rid of whatever ties there were. Rav Shimon Aimer, B'yasai Chalitza Shal Achas Mehem, Poiteris Arasa. Rav Shimon makes a statement in which we're going to delve into right now, figure out what is the statement of Rav Shimon. But says Rav Shimon, if you do bi or chalitza to one of them, shel achas meyen, then that exempts the tzara. Levi does even chalitza, it exempts. Now, of course, the Brisa did not explain what case Rav Shimon is going on. Says the Gemara, Rav Shimon, what is the case that Rav Shimon is referring to? If it's going the case that first Levi is born, and then Shimon does Maimer, it can't be. Why not? Because we already said, Rav Shimon, we already said in such a case where Levi is born, before Shimon does Maimer, we already said that what? We already said Loi Polygraph Shimon. Rav Shimon does not argue in that case. In that Levi is forbidden. So how could Rav Shimon tell us to Yimar Chalitza in that case? Rather, Ella Asava Maimer, the case was being in which Shimon did Maimer first, then the brother is born. And that is where Rav Shimon is teaching us that either do Yibam or Chalitza. Says the Gemara, Cholat Labailas Maimer Loinifter Tzarasa. Now we have to know, so we know which case it's referring to. But Rav Shimon said, do Yibam or Chalitza and Patra up the Tzara. Who are we referring to? So explains the Braisa. If Levi did Chalitza with the Maimer one, with Reuven's wife, Loinifter Tzara, Shimon's own wife, the Tzara, would not be pattered with that. My time, what's the reason? Simple reason being that the tzara, the marriage to Shimon, is a vadai. The one that did Maimer is a safek, and therefore vein safek must be de vadai. The halacha, of course, is a safek cannot remove from a vadai, and therefore do chalitza to the wife in which is a safek, is not a full-fledged over there, will not batter up the vadai. So what must the case be? The case must be not that it's being performed to the Maimer one, but rather the chalitza, the yibam, is being performed to the Sarah to Shimon's wife, and that is case number 2 of the Brisa. But the question is why? We figured out what the case is, where Rav Shimon is arguing, and in which wife you have to Yibam or Chalitza. But now the big question is, why is this true? So explains the Gemara in the first white line, Yasser Menashe Bar Tzvid Kamid Rav Huna V'Yosef V'Kamer My time to Rav Shimon. My time to Rav Shimon, says the Gemara. What's your kasha? Kedamar Taima. We already said. We already said that Levi's born into this perfect world. Levi's born into a situation which Shimon already did the marriage. So what's your question? What's the question of Rav Shimon? Ella says the Gemara. You know what our question is? My time with the Rabbanan. What is the reason the Rabbanan who argue on Rav Shimon? And they hold that Levi is not allowed to do Yimur Chalitza, even if Levi is born after Shimon already did Yibum. Levi's born into this perfect world. Levi's born into a situation that Shimon already did Yibum. So why did the Rabbanan forbid Yibum Chalitza to Levi? Amar Cross. So finally we get the source for Yishtach Shlei Ba'alamai. It says in the Torah, the Yavam takes her as a wife, and performs Yibum with her. And from here we Drarshin and we learn out that even after Shimon marries and does Yibum, the Yevumim are Rishonim, there's still some remnant, there's still a little bit of the Yibum status upon her, and that is the reason why Levi is born later on, even though it seems as if Levi is being born into a situation in which everything is finished. Shimon did Yibum, they're married, so now what's the problem when Shimon dies? Levi should be able to do Yimur Chalitza. So the reason is that no, Adayin Yevum Marishanim, the original status still holds some remnants. But ask the Gemara, really, that we turn to the Mishnah on the last line, what's going on? We already learned that once you do Yibum, boom, you're full-fledged marriage. And what does it teach us? That there's a full-fledged marriage. We learned this already. Melami, you know what it teaches us as we turn over to today's Daf Chaf Omid Aleph. Melami shemegari shemegatu machzira. That once you do Yibum, you're 100% married. You want to get divorced? Get. You want to get remarried? Get remarried. It's full-fledged. So why are you telling me Adayin Yevum Marishainim? There's still a little bit of remnants left. No, we see clearly it's not true. We see once you do Yibum, you're fully married. Explains the Gemara, Hasam Nami, Lema, so this part of the Kasha, Hasam Nami, what is the reason we're saying there's a full-fledged marriage? Hasam Nami, Lema, we should say, V'yima, then Yivum Rishan Malel. And v'tibai chalitza, and if you want to get divorced, you should require chalitza. Explains the Gemara, no, fundamental difference. Shiny hasam damar akra v'lacha loyli isha kim shalacha nasi kishta l'chol davar. A different pasuk. You're darshaning v'yimma. There's still a bit of the original yibam. No, v'lacha, boom, they're fully married. Ask the Gemara, yachi yachanami yakasev rachmana v'yimma. The classical kasha, one pasuk comes to say there's a bit of Yibum. One pasuk comes to say it's a full-fledged marriage. How do we know which is which? How do you know which is which? Answers the Gemara, Mistavra shadi atira atira, v'shadi yisura ayisura. That once there's a marriage, it will be 100%. V'shadi yisura ayisura. In our case, where there'll be some iser, the remnants will stick around. Says the Gemara, so that's the sheet of the Rabbanan. What does Rav Shimon do with these psukim? Rav Shimon, Rav Shimon who says, Levi is born after Shimon does Yibam, everything seemingly is good and dandy. Levi could do Yibam or Chalitza afterwards, because they're born into this perfect situation. What does they do? Says the Gemara, according to Rav Shimon, in any case, we should be able to do Yibum. According to Rav Shimon, if someone's sister was married to their brother, maternal sister, paternal brother, meaning they're not related from the mother, from the father, they go and they marry each other, and then a brother is born and meets, and then the married brother dies and falls Yibum. So in this case as well, Tis Yabim, because when was the new brother born? He was born into the same type of perfect world. He was born after the maternal brother, the paternal sister got married. They were not related. So when this new brother is born in the middle over here, he's born when they're already married. So when he dies, he should be able to do Yibum. Explains the Gemara. How can you say that? He's a sister. Where did the sister go? Where did the provision, where did the Isser go for marrying your sister? Says the Gemara. Over here there's also an Isser. Explains the Gemara, Hayisura delas le'etera, Hayisura des le'etera. There's a fundamental difference. A sister is someone who's Aser and will always be Aser. It's an Isser that never is lifted, whereas Ishes actually Balamai is an Isser de is le'etera, that when the brother dies without children, there is no longer an Isser, and that is the reason why you would be allowed to do Yivamar Chalitza according to Rav Shimon. Says the Mishnah. We just finished dealing with Ishes Ach Shloihai Balamai. Now, we're going to take a step back, rewind a little bit. Let's go into some fundamental dinim of Yivamar Chalitza. Says the Mishnah, Klal Amru B'Yevamos, there's a general rule about all Yevam. Kol Shehib Isser Erva. Whenever there's an Isser Erva, this will be reminiscent of the Mishnah back at Daf Yomi. Whenever there's an Isser Erva, you cannot do Chalitza or Yibum. Isser Mitzvah V'Isser Kedusha, which we're going to explain in the Gemara exactly what that means. When there's an Isser brought upon by a Mitzvah or by Kedusha, then Chayletzes Lo Misebemis, you need Chalitza. And now the Mishnah concludes and says, Achayisa Shehi Yevimta, a sister who's a Yevama, again Chayletzes Lo Misebemis. Isser Mitzvah Shniyos Midivrei Seifrim, when there's a din of Shniyos, secondary relatives, which we'll see in the Gemara what that means more tomorrow. Midrabanan. Isser Kedusha. What is Isser? Excuse me. The Mishnah now is explaining. It just said Isser Mitzvah, Isser Shniyos. What does that mean? Isser Mitzvah is Shniyos. What is Isser Kedusha? Almana le'koyin gadol gusha chalutza le'koyin hedim mamzer z'nesin le'yisah b'asel n'nisin ulam mamzer. So many different parts of the Mishnah. Now let's let the Gemara dissect the Mishnah one at a time. The Mishnah began with a klal, a rule. Kol shehi Isser erba no chalitza no yavama, says the Gemara, the classical kasha klal asu yemai. What is the klal? The general rule in the Mishnah coming to include, says Rafram Bar Baba, Rafram Bar Baba Lasurei, Saras, islandess. Any of the case where there's an islandess woman who cannot have any children, the tzara of that islandess is as well exempt from Yivamar Chalitza, Uched Ravasi, and like the opinion of Ravasi, in which we've seen, we'll take a moment to look at Rashi, even though it's getting read. Rashi quotes the Gemara in Daf Yud Beis. Ravasi says, the loichaletz lo misabem is the erba karina beba islandess. The miatakra measher tilid v'kaima lev isra ishes achal sarasa saras erva. So our Mishnah is going with this opinion of Ravasi that an islandess is nichlal, is included as an erva, and therefore the tzara of the islandess as well is exempt from yibum and from chalitza. V'ikad Amri, says the Gemara, another way of learning. So when there's an Isser Erva, then the Sarah is Aser. What's that coming to exclude from Rafa Lemute? Sarah's island is Lo Kravasi. According to the second Lashon, we're going not like Ravashi. And the Gemara continues quoting the Mishnah that Achaysa Sheyevimta, a sister who is a Yavama, has to do what? Chalitza, not Yibam. Explains the Gemara, Achaysa Daman. Who's a sister? If you're going to tell me that refers to a sister who's an Isser Mitzvah, as the Mishnah said, meaning there's an Isser Dirabanan, what's the problem? Given the Midaraisa Ram Yakame, since on a Daraisa level, it falls for Yibum. So then in order to get married, you're going to be the sister of the Zikukasai on a Daraisa level. So how can you come and do Yibum if on a Daraisa level you're Aser? Ela Chaisa, the Isser Erva, must be a Chaisa, which is an Isser Erva, and that is going to be the case in which there's going to be a heter of our Mishnah. And we continue 7 lines to the Y lines. Isser Mitzvah Shniyos. What is Isser Mitzvah? The secondary Arayis asks the Gemara, my Karli Isser Mitzvah. Why are we calling something that's an Isser Durabanan? And Isser Mitzvah, says the Gemara, fundamental answer. We always have to remember on Rabbiya, Mitzvah Lishmaya Divri Chachamim Durabanans are mitzvahs. Because you have a mitzvah to listen to Chazal. We continue with Isser Kedusha. I'm on the Kohen Gadol Gusha Chutzkain. Had you asked the Gemara, my Karli Isser Kedusha. Why is this referred to as Isser Kedusha? It says you should be holy to your God, and therefore it says, be holy and don't marry every single woman. Explains the Gemara, Tani learned in the Rise of Yehuda Machlef Isser Mitzvah. I'm only going to go to Gushachutz Kain had yet. Rav Yehuda learned the opposite. Not that Isser Mitzvah Shniya is secondary Yisur Midrabanan, but rather Rav Yehuda says no. Isser Mitzvah is I'm only going to go to Gushachutz Kain had yet. On the first wide line, when it refers to Amana Gushal Chayin Hedi, Iser Kedusha is Sheniyos Midivrei Saifim. My Carly Iser Kedusha. Why is Iser Kedusha called Iser Sheniyos and in the Rabbanon? Amar Abai Kol Makayim Divrei Chachamim Nikra Kadosh. You're called holy. Amar Rabba asks Rabba, tell me you're just not a Kadosh. What do you mean if you don't follow the Rabbanon? Does Rashi Namiloi Mikri? You're not called the Rosh. Of course you are. You didn't follow the Rabbanons. Elamar Rava explains Rava Kadosh Atzmacha B'Mutar Lach. The reason why it's called an Isser Kedusha is you have to make yourself holy, even with that which is permitted to you. And it continues the Gemara. The fourth wide line, the Tudat Almana L'Koyin Gadol. The Isser Almana L'Koyin Gadol says the Gemara. They said the Mishnah, that there is no Yibum. Says the Gemara now, Kapasik V'Tani, the Tana learns that a Kohen Gadol cannot do Yibum onto an Almana. Explains the Gemara, whatever type of almana it is, whether it was an almana from a full-fledged marriage of Nisuin, whether it was an almana from Erisin, there's no yibum in such a case. So I asked the Gemara, 1 second, I understand that once an almana gets fully married, now there's an asay and a lois asay. So therefore I make sense. Reminiscent back of Daf Gimel Dalet Hey, etc. The asay of Yibum cannot push away an asay and a leisa asay by an almana from the Suin. But I asked the Gemara, but when you have an almana from Erisin, leisa asay gredo, such an almana is what? Only a leisa asay, only an Isser Daraisa, a negative commandment. You have asay v'yachaleisa asay, so why does an asay of Yibum come and push away the leisa asay and allow the Kohen Gadol to do Yibum to the Almana? Explains the Gemara. Rav Gidol Marav Amarkra. Va'olsa Yevimta Yashaira says in the pasuk, the Yevamos should go up to the gate for a chalitza. Shein Talmulimer Yevimta. It is no reason the pasuk had to say his Yevama. Why did it say it? Ma Talmulimer Loimar Yevimta to teach us Yishcha Yevama Acha Sha'oil LeChalitza Ve'ena Oil LeYibam. The extra word comes to teach us there is a case in which you have to do chalitza na Yibam. And what is this unique case in which we have a situation of Yibam that you cannot do Yibam and you have to do Chalitza, Chayvei, Lavim. This is a case of Chayvei Lavim. This is the case of Amana L'Koyin Gadol. This is the reason the Asay does not push away the Lois Asay, even if it's just the Lois Asay of by an Amana bin Ha-Irisin of a Koyin Gadol. Asks the Gemara 1 second, Ve'ima Chayvei Krisos. Why don't we say the pasuk refers to even Chayvei Krisos, and that in that case there needs to be Chalitza? We know all the way back from Daf Beis that whenever there's Chayvei Krisos, we don't say Asay Dechelois Asay Sheish Boikaris. Says the Gemara, but wait, very good. Asay doesn't push it off, but maybe it should need a Chalitza, just like the case of Almana. Explains the Gemara, Amar Kra, 3 lines to the bottom, Im Lo Yachbot Ish Lekachas. It says in the pasuk, the man does not want to take the Yevama. The obvious implication is Hocha fades if he wants to miyabim. The Chalitza is the other side of a coin of a potential Yibum. And from there we learn out and therefore any case where there's Kares, there's no potential Yibum. If there's no potential Yibum, there's no potential Chalitza. But ask the Gemara, the Kasha that's bothering everyone right now. Also, you can't do Yibum to the Almana. So this all should not require Chalitza. Explains the Gemara, Rabbi Rachmani Yevimta. No, we have the extra word, Yevimta. The classical Kasha, Ma'rois. How do you know which way to go? You have something including, something excluding. How do you know what's included and what is excluded? As we turn over to Chava Mebeis, says the Gemara, Mistavra Chayvei Lavin Tafsibu Kedushin. Chayvei Krisos loy tafsibu kedushin. A lot of different rules in which we learn converging right now. What happens if someone marries someone who's a Chayvei Lav? And it's us, sir, you're not allowed to do it. You're over an Isser Daraisa. But does the kedushin work? Yes. But what happens when someone marries Chayvei Krisos? The kedushin does not work. So says the Gemara, it's mistaver that a Chayvei Lav and like Amana L'Koyin Gadol, that's going to be the case that's going to require Chalitza, whereas the Chayvei Krisos will require Nothing. Says the Gemara, 1 second. Masiv Rava asks Rava 3 lines on the top of Chafam Beis. Isser Mitzvah, Isser Kedusha. In a case where we have a Yevama who is in Isser Mitzvah, which we know means in Isser Drabanan. Isser Kedusha, which we just learned means in Isser Loisasei. We learned in our Braisa, if the Yevama Lamaisa goes and sleeps with her or does Chalitza, Niftara Tzarasa. The Tzara is Potter. Ask the Gemara, if you're telling me that Chavelavin, like the case of Amar Kohen Gadol, midaraisa has to do Chalitza Yibam Leiramya, and midaraisa Yibam doesn't work. If everything's on the high daraisa level, so why is it that when, if he goes and actually does Yibam, he goes and sleeps with her patters up the Tzara, it should be nothing? Rava asks, and Rava answers 7 lines down, Litstadim Katani, split it up. Kedusha, split up the cases. It's not all talking about an Isser Mitzvah. When you boil her, it's talking about Isser Mitzvah, which we know refers to the Isser D'Rabbanan, Chalatzla, that's when it's an Isser D'Araisa. But it's true in a Chanami, says the Gemara, if you try to go and do Yibam to Sony of an Isser D'Araisa, it will not work. Masiv Rava continues the Gemara by asking, Petzu Adaka, Krushichos, Riz Adam, Vasaki, and all different males who cannot have children, one who Petzu Adaka, his testicles are crushed, Krushivcha, or the organ is cut off, Riz Adam, or was taken off by man, Hazakin, someone who's old who cannot have children, says the Bryson, if they are involved, an elderly man or a man that just cannot have children, they're involved in the situation of Yibam, either do Yibam or do Chalitza. And similarly, the other way around, if a woman falls to Yibam to them, they as well could do Chalitza or Yibam. Ketzad, what's the case? Meisu, if one of them dies, Ulahem Achim, and there are brothers, Ulahem Nashim, and the one who was Nifter had a wife, Amdu Achim, and the brother gets up, Asu Maimer, and does Kedushin the Rabbanim bin Seihem with the wife, Vinas Nugat, or divorces them, V'chaltu, or does Chalitza, one of 3 things, marriage, divorce, or Chalitza, what they did works. And what happens if they slept with that wife? Kanu, it works. They're married. That's a form of Yibam. What if the brother dies? Amdu, hey, Maimer. What if the reverse case? The brother dies, and one of these men, the elderly man, the man that's sterile, like Sedra, gets up and does Maimer bin Shaysayim with the wife of the brothers, Vinasnu get, or gives a get, or Shechaltu does Chalitza, Masha Asu Balu. And if one of these men who cannot have children goes and sleeps with their existing wife, the wife that fell to Yibam, Kanu, it works. The Asr Lekaimam, but they're not allowed to stay married. Why not? Mishum Shenemar Layavu Psuadaka, because the Torah says you're not allowed to bring up Psuadaka into the Kahal Hashem. Now, after a lengthy brayse, the Gemara says, if what you just suggested is true, that anyone that even didn't daraisa, like a man Kohen Gadol, what's the halacha? You need chalitza and yibam does not work. So in Baalu Amaikanu, in this case, these are also cases of Isura daraisa. So why, if you went and slept with them, why does it work? So we see clearly that when there's an Issa Daraisa, it should work. And Baalu is Kanu. But you just told me a moment ago, L'yibam L'yiramya, there should be no Yibam on a Daraisa level. Explains the Gemara, you're absolutely correct. Elam Arava, a totally new pshat in why the Mishnah excludes Almana L'Kohen Gadol, even if it's only Erisin. Again, this goes back that we started that when the Mishnah excluded Almana Kohen Gadol, it was carte blanche in all places, whether it's Nisuin, whether it's Erisin. Erisin is an Isser Leisase, Nisuin is Asayana Leisase. So why is Erisin excluded on Marav? You know what the reason is? Almanim in Eiris in Nami, Asay Viloisa, say says Rav Achidish. When you have an Almana, even just from Eiris in, it's both an Asay and a Loisa. Say, why? Says you should be holy. That's the Asay that piggybacks on the regular Loisa say of Almana the Kohen Gadol, and that is the reason why it does not work. Says the Gemara, 1 second, if what you're saying is true, Mamzeres and Asina Michael Amim, what about a Mamzer Nasim? As well, explains the Mark Sivis Kadashtem, you should be holy. Says the Gemara, if what you're saying is true, that even on a din derabana, there's the daraisa of his kadishtem. Comes out that every single din in the Torah is an asay and a loisa. Because you always have the asay of listening to the chachamim. You always have the asay of his kadishtem to make yourself holy. So Elam Arava, the chsev is kadishtem. Elam Arava, third shot. Gezeira, amanim in Eirsin, atamanim in Asuin. The Gemara folds and concedes, you're right. Really, Almanim in Asuin, there's no reason to exclude. But you know, the reason that we excluded Almanim in Eirsin from Yevamos and Chalitza is because to a din derabanan of Almanim in Asuin. Says the Gemara, great, but Mamzeres and Asina, Michael Amemar, what are you going to say about Mamzeres and Asina? Answers the Gemara, Gezira b'makay mitzvah, Otu shaloi b'makay mitzvah. We make a din derabanan. We make a gezira on them as well, because there might be a case of a potential mitzvah where there's no isser asay. So we make an isser, we make a gzeira in such a case. Ask the Gemara, and now many cases should fall into this gzeira that we should be nervous. It looks like that. Anytime we have a case of one's paternal brother, you should not allow yibum. Why not? Because it looks like which is forbidden. Explains the Gemara, no, yibum benachla tali rachmana made the other. Everyone knows that yibum is all about inheritance. We even only is discussing the paternal relationships to the father, so you do not have to be concerned about that. Ask the Gemara further. A woman that has no children should not be allowed to do Yibum. Why not? The fundamental gash in all of Yibum. Over here at Chavam Abiz, we have a bomb that blows up the whole Yibum. You should never be allowed to do Yibum. You know why? Because maybe because maybe you're going to end up doing Yibum in a case where there are children, which of course there is no children, there is no Yibum. When there's children, there's a regular Isra. You're not going to marry your brother's wife. Explains the Gemara, no, everyone knows that. But Banim Tali Rachman, it's all telling the children, Meidei Yada, everyone knows that. Again, the Gemara asks further, in a case where you have a brother that was alive, you should not be allowed to do Yibum. Why? Explains the Gemara, B'yeshiva, Tala, Rachmana, it all has to do with dwelling together in the world, and again, Midiyada, everyone knows that. And finally, says the Gemara, Kol Anashim Loitis Yabna, should never allow Yibum. Why not? Gezera Misham Islandis. Because there is a case where you don't have Yibum, so how could you let Yibum in this case? Maybe you'll come due by an Islandis? Says the Gemara, Lo Shchicha. But Mamzeres and Asina Nami Lo Shchicha. That's also not common. Elo Amarava Nubshat Gezera Bir Rishayna. Atu Biyashniya. You know the reason why we're not going to allow an Almana L'Kohen Gadol, because it's true. The Bia Rishayna is allowed. The Bia Rishayna is the din of Yibum. The Bia Rishayna is the Asay, the din D'Oraisa, the positive commandment, which pushes away the Lois Asay. But we make Gzeira to Biyashniya because Biyashniya is not a mitzvah. Now you have the regular Isser of Almana L'Kohen Gadol, and which cannot happen. Tanam Yahachi, we have a right to this, which we'll conclude with. And Balu Kanu via Rishaina, but also like via Shniya, you cannot continue staying married. Hadam Rava retracted. Became Ravashi La Milsi Damri. It's not true. Why not? Amrei Shlakish Kol Makim Shatamoitzi Asay Veloisa Seimatiyach Lakaim Shnei Mutav Veim Lav Yavay Asay V'Yitzcha. As Loisa say, the only time it's doich is when you cannot be Makayim both. Hachanami, says the Gemara, fundamental difference. Efshar bechalitza. There's a potential to do chalitza. So why are we going to go and let the Asay be doich and do chalitza, the Makayim Asay, Loisa say, and then everything is Mekuyam? Meisvei vim balu kanu. What do you mean? It says if you do Baal, it works. Says the Gemara Tiyufta, you're right, that is indeed a problem. It shouldn't actually work. Should have to do chalitza.